Future Gas Show. Brought to you by the Club of Amsterdam.
Greetings to everyone who is listening to us and watching this. I'm Reto Brosi, the Managing Director of Migro Consulting. Mainly my work is about strategic and key risk management. I'm privileged and I'm delighted and very happy to host this podcast or this episode of the Future Now show. And I'm actually even more happy, more privileged to have a guest with us, Nkwi. I will introduce him in a short moment. Hello.
Hello.
So give me just a minute or two to go through his very illustrious and comprehensive CV. He is the founder and the principal consultant of Nkwi and Reto. His symbiotic indigeneity approach to economics, business, and R&D at Savimbo, UNBCA, and SPAN fosters a partnership bioculture design between indigenous and non-indigenous shareholders. His work and R&D at the University of Arizona safeguarded agroecological systems to promote social ecological value system and reframe the paradox of open sustainability, development, and conservation. I'm very much looking forward to this. I'm sure Nkwi has a lot to tell us. Maybe just to get the conversation going, Nkwi, when we spoke last time, you made a statement which honestly surprised and shocked me at the same time. You shared with us that those very well-known United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that in your biosphere or in your area where you live and work, there's a lot to be still achieved compared to other regions. So I lived in Asia for a long time, so I'm familiar with some of the success stories. So I'd be very keen to hear from you what you are seeing, what you're observing, why there are some struggling points, and from your point of view, most importantly, what actually could be done or should be done to address some of those important issues. So welcome again, Nkwi.
Yeah, thank you. And greetings all the way from Abya Yala and Tortola Island here in the Americas. That's our native greetings from our land and our territory. I represent the Karanki Kutakachi Nation. And I will speak from my experience in indigenous systems. But make no mistake, I will not speak about indigenous people or on behalf of them, only from my experience, and that shall be very clear. And this is my experience when the sustainable developmental goals, and recently, maybe 2 weeks ago, we held a symposium in the university, in the Catholic University of Cuenca in Cuenca, Ecuador, where we asked the question, sustainability for whom? And in this, we were asking the exact question that you're posing. For whom is it working? For whom is this framework that is at a very global scale being designed? Because they are wonderful, wonderful if you read it, zero hunger, decent work. We're talking about life. We're talking about equity. We're talking about these beautiful, beautiful things, justice.
Exactly. Sounds wonderful as you say it, right?
Yeah, it's wonderful. And then we are trying to get to zero emissions, right? Like that's the end goal, the whole idea. And so, in the symposium and from my work, I have been seeing but the non-industrialized societies or non-industrialized cultures, aka so-called global South countries or developing countries or underdeveloped countries, we haven't actually contributed to the pollution, to these emissions. If anything, our fault to be taking is that we have provided the resources for the pollution to take place in countries like Europe, Asia, Canada, and the US. That probably is our mistake, our fault of having provided those raw natural resources like oleum and rubber material, minerals. And what I have give us back out there is oil spills, biodiversity degradation, territorial removal, pressure to people to be displaced from their territories.
Yeah.
That's what we have get out of that. So therefore, when these beautiful developmental goals is telling us that we need to achieve to zero hunger, how do we do that?
Exactly.
Because we are coming from a non-industrialized country, and that needs to be very clear, very clearly understood, our non-industrialized place. So we should have our rights to develop. We should have our rights to develop, and we should be striving to develop our own technologies from our own self-determination, from where we stand. So right now they say we need to do electrical vehicles to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, right? That's wonderful. But then I look around South America, primarily Ecuador. There is no place where to charge my electrical car.
Yeah, exactly. That's the right solution, the wrong moment and the wrong place.
Exactly.
Correct.
Then you have the other problem. Then you don't have a technical service provider.
Mm.
You don't have people when the capacity to provide that. What if it breaks? Then what? Who will come to fix it? Is a company like a big motor company coming in to fix? How long it will take? So that developmental goal of zero emissions, that place is asking us, Global South, is asking us to do a very interesting thing. It's asking us to have 3 cars, just in case. One, it might break down. Second, because there is a horrible traffic design in urban cities. So we use the plate number to recycle who gets to roll in the streets. And then you need a 3rd car, just in case all those other 2 things take place. So we need resources to build all those 3 cars.
Exactly, and that is not resource neutral, not at all, right?
That's not resource neutral. That's the sustainability. We need to look the supply chain, the healthiness of the supply chain, and that's why for us in our biosphere or at our bioregional scale doesn't work. And then the next thing is even more problematic: zero hunger and zero poverty. Those 2 things can come to hand. Now, we tell farming communities, indigenous communities, local communities, we are continuously pushing them and continuously dismantling their way of life. Subsistence agriculture, we're continuously fighting against it. We're pushing it away. Why? Because we want to industrialize their agriculture. And then we want to make it scalable. It needs to scale. But there is just a few things that you can actually scale in a way that it can hold cultural cohesion, social environmental cohesion. So when we think about zero hunger, we need to ask the question, what kind of food? What is the conditions in which this food is grown?
Exactly. If you, in a worst case scenario, replace local food with imported, sorry for my language, with imported junk, then that is definitely not the right way to go about it. Agree with you. Yeah.
Just yesterday, I was having coffee when a colleague of mine, he's an indigenous chef. He dedicates in curating, making food beautiful and taste delicious. And he comes to me when I worried news. Yahweh, you know what I just heard? The price of chicken is gonna go up. Okay, I didn't know that. Why is it going up? Oh, because the corn that we use to feed the livestock is gonna go up because the country, Ecuador and South America, is about to export half of what they grow in the country. To where? Where? To countries in the developing area, in the industrialized area, because in the US, Canada, in the UK, in other places, corn is used as livestock, oil, diesel. So you need a massive amount to maintain those things. So very carefully think about these sustainable goals. For whom is it? We are growing in here in a very precarious way, industrializing very, very fast, with no safeguard, no following, no APA methodologies in here, just following. And plus, all the nasty pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, fertilizers that are banned in industrialized countries are being dumped in non-industrialized countries, like Ecuador, like Peru, like Bolivia, like Mexico. And we are using all of that to grow the corn, to export back then. And what we get out of this developmental goal? What are we getting out of it?
So the issue then is probably the goals per se, nothing wrong with them, but the approach or the method that have been taken or
absolutely.
A bit like
absolutely
in working in two different solar systems for two different solar systems, right?
Think about it. Who designed these things? Think about who designed these goals. Was it the framework from non-industrialized countries? Like, let's say, for instance, from my experience, was it indigenous systems in the conversation? Will they actually in the design? I'm not talking about consult. I'm not saying consult. There's a big difference between consulting and being part of that design. Because if a member of the organization or representative of indigenous systems or farming systems from these countries will have been in the table, they have already told them, your zero hunger thing has too many holes in here because we don't have that much land. We don't have that much machinery. The upfront investment itself is already excluding.
Yeah. And you make a good point, right? Designing is from point zero. Consultation, very often the bus has left the station already, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess
it's like I saw early on. I was seeing urban development, like urban planning. We're seeing, and then here in the Andes mountains and part of the Amazon is urbanizing in many places because there is a lot of people, external entities trying to jump in. So there is a quick development taking place. So I have seen exactly that. They design this thing and then they just start building and then they ask like, is this okay? It's already done. This thing is already done. So it doesn't matter if I say no, if I say yes. Sure. People at the community, that's what I mean, like in my biosphere, at my bioregional level, we have very little collective agency, meaning we have very little social politic decision-making power. And that will always be between us when we are funneling this beautiful, let's think about the COP. The last COP that we just have in Dubai. What did they say? They say trillions of dollars to be funneled into the ground, to be invested in these sustainable developmental goals, or to be invested in the protection of biodiversity. How are you making this money flow actually where the people are doing the heavy lifting, the work? Where is it in that? Those things, they are not part of the design conversation. So we need to start thinking about, for me, in my experience, we need to start thinking about upstream first. We need to look upstream. What are the dams, if we are the metaphor of a river, what are the dams that are coming from the mountains down? How we overcome those dams? Because we have global meetings, the UN, let's say, is a global entity. Then we have a bioregional, like a South America, Central America, North America, the Pacifics. And there is these funds being put up to these specific regions. Now is in South America. From South America, it has to enter into Ecuador. From Ecuador, where does it go from Ecuador? There is no accountability. There is no responsibility. Who is accounting for this funding that is apparently coming into the ground for these beautiful things that is being debated and is being designed. That is why it doesn't work at the ground level. We need to think about downstream and how that flows into upstream.
I think I understand. Where do you think is the missing link? Because as you said, right, there's good stuff coming from United Nations, and there are needs that you in your biosphere can clearly identify, and to me it seems somewhere there's a missing link in between. So how we go about this?
I will start by acknowledging two things. It has to be acknowledged at the UN level. You know, we use the word underdeveloped, right? That's how we are discussing global South countries,
which is already a very loaded word, right?
Exactly,
right?
Very loaded,
it's
very
a very loaded word,
very degrading.
Yes,
and already telling us, you cannot do this. Let me do it for you. Don't you worry. I got you. I got your best interest. You just stay there. Stay there. That is when I hear underdeveloped, it's like when you have like a mental deficiency. You know, oh, your child is underdeveloped. So he will not be able to do, or she will not be able to do X, Y, and Z. But there is many ways to be part of a citizenship. Many.
Exactly.
So in this context, it's very similar. It's already very loaded. So we need to come from a term of, yes, we are non-industrialized society. That needs to be very clear. If we come from that point, then we start looking at what kind of infrastructure is already in place, such that they can support the infrastructure in these non-industrialized countries, can support the frame, the design, those goals that is being discussed at the global level. And then start thinking about, based on this understanding and based on the population, because these non-industrialized countries has another issue. We are a non-print culture. The majority in global South, our education is a context of managing indigenous systems, which is non-printed. It's symbolic. It's oral culture. Therefore, if you bring in all these designs, these approach, these methodologies from an industrialized society,
guidelines,
very good, manuals, guides, already right there is the problem. Right there, right in that point is the problem. So to me, the conversation is not going in a feedback loop. You know, you can propose this, what is happening, but you need to also be adaptable to the system by non-industrialized countries. That piece is horribly missing. It's so horribly missing. And the other thing is, to me, is the way that we make those public calls. We need experts. We need experts. When a track record of academic work, publications, a lot of farming communities, local communities, indigenous communities. The unfortunate reality for us in here in the global South or non-industrialized countries, it takes us between 3 to 5 generations to enter a university. And that is with no guarantee that we might graduate. That puts a tremendous deficit in an indigenous person from a community with the spirits of the community, with the agenda, when those interested to be part of that design tables.
But generally speaking, education in the way you do it in your culture is open to boys and girls, right? Yeah, it's just a different way. You said it's the non-printed approach. I understand. The
non-printed approach. So also in that there is a measure. I had the privilege, let's put it that way, or the fortunate to be educated in the USA. So even in the USA, currently, right now, we are there is a lot of opposition from the students, because the material, the educational system, is not meant to create better citizens. It's meant to create better workforce. There's a difference in there. So nowadays, the current generation that are at the graduate level, they are continuously protesting or being activists of their own learning process. Like, they probably want to become better citizens. If we are to enter sustainability, we need to become better citizens, not just better workers to continuously produce more.
So probably that's also a position for yourself, right? Because you understand, and you have lived and live in both worlds, so to speak, right? So you're probably a very good connector there, right?
Yes, I will say, I'm a privilege to be in both ends. I'm a privilege to have grown up all my life and have all the indigenous complexity theories that I possess built in my community. And then I was in a way hold the responsibility to learn from what is happening outside. So I myself consider to be an outsider within. I understand the outside complexity, but also I try to work wing by and from the inside complexity. So try to create a bridge and conversation piece across this cell membrane in these spheres.
Nicely said. And the membrane is permeable, right? Not for
very nicely.
Not for everything, and not all the time.
Not all the time, and that's how we might want to see when we're thinking about, like, for instance, and back to the point of developmental goals, right? Like, in this case, we have a lot of projects, a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs from countries, from the industrialized societies, with very good intentions, right? I have no doubt of such a thing, with good intentions to try to, and somehow add the little piece into these goals for 2030, which we are 5 years away,
very soon.
right?
It's very soon.
Very soon. Very extremely soon to reach that. So in that sense, they have trying to, like, how do we get to that point? How do we get to those things? And at times I find that they try to force their approach, their perspective, their intentions, their positionality across this permanent membrane, making permanent holes in the membrane.
Yeah, and then the membrane's broken. Yep.
Very good. The membrane is broken, and then we enter into problems of colonization, greenwashing, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth.
Exactly. Maybe if we can sort of slightly move on, I think we spend very valuable time now sort of painting a picture, doing a bit like diagnosis, right? Like two doctors, right?
Yeah.
So maybe now, if you can share a little bit with us, what are you currently working on, or what are your sort of short, medium-term plans, that we maybe get a bit of an idea what keeps you busy? Where are your action points?
Yeah, right. Like, keep me busy. A lot of things, right? A lot of things keep me busy. I will say, things I have keeps the majority of my time, day and night. I'm thinking about indigenous-led R&D. When we mean by it, there is a need for demystifying indigenous nature of things philosophy. What we in the industrialized countries we will call sciences, technologies, engineering, mathematics. And for indigenous people has been more of a philosophical way of understanding these systems and applying them directly. So I spend a lot of time thinking about the language that we speak, the oral histories that we have, the mythical creatures that we possess, and also the metaphysics of all things, to see how much of the science is embedded in those things. And to make it more tangible, my work, I primarily work building living systems labs in order to put indigenous agroecology systems in place. So apply indigenous technologies in food systems. So agroecology, I find it to be a very beautiful medium to discuss all these dimensions. Like we discussed the ecological component, the agricultural component, the social component, community component, the politics, economics. So that has been keeping me busy into building different frameworks and also thinking about what we were talking about, like the permeable membrane, thinking about how do we authentically, how do we truly have a bioculture partnership design? How do we do that perhaps as a business development tool? Because many times we think about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as a way to be just for society. But then we don't take it further. But partnership designed, I find it could be added as a business development or in the way of how do we create companies or businesses that are sustainable. And it works in cohesion or symbiosis with indigenous systems. So it takes me a lot of time in those design process, thought processing behind it. And then the other piece to me is I am very involved with the nature markets to try to bring some of the indigenous systems perspectives. Consulting, I consult for many nature markets companies that are entering, like in biodiversity credits or carbon credits that are trying to enter. And my job is primarily, it's kind of hard to say we will stop this. It's not going to happen. It's already, like you say, like the bus has already left the station. At this point is how do we create the steps on which we can design better, on which we can make better decisions.
Yeah, get you.
So those things is where I am primarily working and investing a lot of my time.
I mean, I'm truly impressed. I know it's a bit of an old buzzword, but I'm impressed how holistically you look at the matter. That's beautiful, but also intellectually very, very complex, right?
Yeah.
Can I just pick up on one term you talk about? You talked a few times about bioculture. Can you just elaborate for us a little bit what this encompasses, what this is?
In this case, I'm using bioculture, but I'm spelling culture with a K.
Exactly.
A C.
Exactly.
Because bioculture with a C, if you Google it, it's gonna be this notion of biological diversity and indigenous knowledge together. There is a biological knowledge, a biological diversity that is held by indigenous knowledge. That is, by the dictionary definition, bioculture when I see.
Okay.
When I spell it bioculture when K, I'm referring to a specific design process, or a design process. Because in bioculture design process, we are looking to going back again to the beginning of our conversation, we need to tell the right history in the right place. So we start that. So bio, it means the biosphere, the physical area, the community where we are. That's the bio. The culture is the history, is the narrative that's gonna be, is the right place where it needs to happen. We cannot talk about indigenous issues only from the laboratory or theorize them in academia or theorize them in the UN. We need to be in the community to actually design when the community. So that is one piece of this design. The next thing is where we start thinking about grounding empathy. How do we actually remove some of our biases, stereotypes, privileges, and start grounding the empathy where indigenous, non-indigenous, we can sit at the same level of table and make concrete arguments of our positionality. Meaning positionality is
truly
a
have
lot
a
of
conversation with each other,
a
right?
conversation.
Same language about same issues, yeah.
Same issues, and these arguments tends to be long, tends to be a day long, tends to be 2 days. But you really, it's like having a massage, this deep tissue massage, that kind of thing. Because otherwise we're having so cavalier when the notion of community engagement. Like we send a survey or we give a workshop.
Yeah, I know what you mean, right? I come to see you and we have one day nice hee hee ha ha, and then we split again. Yep.
We split again. So grounding embassy is understanding indigenous culture politics, meaning the ceremonies, meaning the ritual ways. That's the metaphysics. How do we get into the metaphysics, but also the non-indigenous systems, meaning those systems that maybe are more linear, maybe are more product oriented, and both of them, they need to be dynamic, they need to be adaptive, but we need to ground the embassy, and then we follow into custodianship, into positionality, intentionality, and finally we end with how do we now that we have gone through all these things, how now we do systems of living well. How do we get there? Systems of living well, meaning it is not just one product that will solve the problem. No, it's the conditions in which we are setting these things that it will start creating these change-making things. For me, it's primarily creating chaos of change. That's primarily my goal. How do I create chaos of change? Otherwise, like you say, like kihaha, like we have fun, and you orderly go to your bus, orderly you go back to the community. But that's if you create a little bit of chaos of change, maybe I go to the same bus. Maybe I go with you.
But something has changed, right? Something has changed, something has developed. Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
It's actually interesting that you refer to this linearity. I mean, if we go, let's say, in European history, right? We also had multiverse metaphysics, then through industrialization, things became very mono, very linear. And now with that volatile uncertainty, complex and ambiguous world, it's probably going a little bit broader. So that's actually a very interesting comparison and the parallel.
Yeah, then you need to think about there is a huge resistance of like recently has become more trendy when even in academia the word interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. You probably have heard this, right? And it's trending right now, like it's a trending thing to be a scientist in this sphere. In that notion, to me, that resistance is our fear of uncertainty.
Oh, definitely.
We need things to be certain. Like I don't know if you have seen this. Every time there is a success of a company, there is this beautiful train line. Like there is, there is no meat in the no. Look at that. Look at this beautiful, so beautiful. It's going to the infinite. So we have a level of certainty to invest in that. We'll have a level of certainty to say that indigenous complexity systems theory embraces uncertainty, embraces urgency and cautiousness. We need to embrace both things. We are in urgent times, not denying that. But if we allowed certainty and urgency govern our decisions, we will continuously go back to the social cohesion issues that we are facing, social inequalities. Stagnation. These things. So that's why, to me, it has been more of when I say grounding embassies, like let's talk about these things, like let's go through this process together, because at the end, only then we can think about like how do we end up with a systems of living well. The living well is dimensionality, right? Like living well for me could be, living in a farm is living well. like
exactly.
Is in
Exactly.
everybody's
Exactly.
dimensionality and pluriversality.
Yeah.
So that is the idea when bioculture design.
Mm-hmm. So you're the ambassador of that holistic and also probably a bit provocative approach, right? Because
yes,
because as you say, if we just sit back and relax, nothing's gonna change and nothing's gonna move.
Yeah,
yeah.
But again, my invitation to the audience and to you and to everybody is let us start embracing a little bit of uncertainty, because we are in uncertain times and our life has been uncertain. Even though we have probably mapped, you grow up, you go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, you graduate, you have a job, you have a wife, you probably have the train line. But in between those things, it happened uncertain events that we had to cope, we have to adapt, we have to mitigate, and we have to become resilient. So we need to start looking from the perspective, and we are in urgent times to take actions, but make no mistake, you need to be accountable and responsible. And to be that, you need to be cautious. You need to be cautious in how you make the action.
Agree with you. I mean, I'm going back again to the United Nations. I'm familiar with the sort of the first version of it, the famous Brundtland report,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I really like about that one, it says development, but not at the cost of future generations, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people misread the Brundtland report and say, okay, let's switch off the light and give all the computers back and so on and so forth. That's not the point. But the point is, as you say, it's a development which suits the environment, right? And what suits us here in Switzerland is clearly different from what suits the people in your biosphere, but it's development, not at the excess of or at the cost or the detriment of future generations. That's why I'm such a great fan of the Brundtland report, actually.
And I think in that report is also a piece that they probably miss. And when we think about development, we immediately go to technology, right? Like immediately, it's like a one step. It's the linearity. It's like a development, technology, and whatever technology is. So one of the things that I frequently bring up to the nature marketplace is technology. It has to be analyzed and designed from the pluriverse, because indigenous local communities, farming communities, marginalized communities, you name it, all these communities, we have developed our own technology. There is things that we use to do a job. So imposing a industrialized way of looking development with the homo technocentrism is a hard thing. Is a hard thing to shake off, because then we are degrading other technologies that has been suited for the environment where they have been developed. So that needs to be clearly bring up into conversation. How do we create these kind of technologies from the conversation? And that will be adding into your discussion of this development with no harm to future generations, or not at the cost of those future generations, but rather merging, not merging, but in conversation with those diverse ways of understanding technology.
That's an important point, right? Sort of just because something works for me, I might have a natural tendency to tell you now, well, try this, it worked for me, but maybe it's completely the wrong thing in your environment, right?
I tell my young members of Kindred Hub, I said, do you know what a smartphone actually is for? He said, I make calls, send texts, watch funny videos, be in social media. Oh, this is just inherently, when you give a smartphone in somebody's hand, inherently you gravitate towards those things that are more immediate. Phone calls and text is like the immediate thing, and then social media came in and is the immediate thing. But then when I said, okay, do you know you can actually do research in these smartphones now? You can go to any search engine and Google about not Google, but search any topic, and you might be able to learn more about that topic, and you might also create content about the topic instead of just consuming the social media and any of the other things that's happening, that's quick release endorphins and so forth. And then it's like, huh? Well, yeah, that's not what the school told me. No.
Actually, I do spend a bit of time with sort of secondary school students, helping them a bit with career coaching and CVs and things like that. And I always try to tell them, look, these things are great. So if you want to surf and consume, that's fine. But we all need to become producers. Just consumption is just not good enough. So I'm always trying to entice people, become producers, not just for more in the mobile phone space, but generally speaking, yes, we all consume. I consume, you consume, but that we give ourselves that push, that nudge. We also need to probably be more producers than we've been in the recent past.
Yeah, and that's what I meant when I said before, like this notion of bioculture partnership designed, because we have a lot of companies coming in through this permeable membrane, and they bring their own technologies to track animals, to acoustics, to measure carbon dioxide, you name it, count forests. And there's a fine line between the local communities or the indigenous people. Often indigenous people become testers and implementers of this technology. And then as I look into it, it's like, where is the social mobility out of this thing?
No, you're still receiver, right? You're still consumer.
You're still a consumer. To be a part of the social mobility cohort, you need to actually understand the ramifications and the implications of what the technology means. Right now, when you collect it, you put the camera trap. What happens when the picture captures that bird? That is a key species of that.
It's the what, the how, and the why, right? It's
exactly
these three steps.
These three things need to take place. So we need to be technology literacy. That technology literacy is adaptable to these
and meaningful,
systems.
And meaningful, yes, and meaningful.
Extremely. It's extremely humbling to me when I go and I teach for a couple of days and I start seeing. I go, wow! No, this is not how we were expecting things will be. Like, oh, I didn't know I can take pictures and create this thing, or I can track how this evolved based on these images or sound. So it's adaptive technology literacy also that misses a lot of this point, and primarily when we're thinking about like decent work opportunities. These is pieces into the hopefully moving into the social mobility.
Now, the time is flying. We've almost filled up the hour already. Maybe to close it up, the Future Now show has a very big and a very diverse audience from literally all over the place. So if you maybe want to use the last few minutes to leave a parting message with that wide audience. I said I've been truly impressed. I've learned a lot over the last almost an hour. It's been a complete eye-opener for me. So I really appreciated that conversation. So maybe the last few minutes, just the stage is yours, leaving us with a take-home and a takeaway message.
To any member of the audience that you might be thinking like how do we do this? How do we actually become allied? And where do we start? It's not that only the Amazon that needs to be go through the process of adaptation. It's not only that. It's also your backyard. It's also your community garden. It's also your sustainable agriculture systems. The more circular you become, the more you help us in the global south, because you are taking less resources from our hands. And also you are also pressuring less big corporations to come in and exploit our natural resources, mine silver, copper, iron, gold, all those things, and oil. The more circular you become, also you help in the supply chain. So that starts by you understanding that nature is in the sidewalk of your neighborhood. Nature is in the empty lots that you probably see as a dump or as a area that shows poverty. That's not true. That is just noble ecosystems.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Noble ecosystems that unfortunately we have a imagined reality. What is the wilderness? And we want everything to be like that. That's not gonna happen. Correct. We have been in this planet for too long, and there is no, at least in my humble understanding, there is no actual wilderness that hasn't been in one period or in another one being touched by the pencil of a human activity. At least in my humble understanding of our ecological historical evolution. For
the
that
footprint
matter,
is everywhere. Yeah,
it's everywhere. We have touched it everywhere, and now with the advancement, when technology, we are even touching places that only the dinosaurs or the big fauna used to be, like the Antarctic and the North Pole. We are even touching even in those corners. So for that, I invite you to look your novel ecosystem services as a way of engineering them, as a way of going through the ecological engineering, adaptation, restoration of them. And then when you look the global south, look at the systems level, not just like a one problem or find
sort of that hyper-focused linear approach again. Yeah,
linear approach, the silver bullet solutions. Like right now, I see like AI for conservation. AI being artificial intelligence for conservation will solve this.
Probably not.
Will AI come in with the illegal hunters come in and try to kill an indigenous leader? Will AI come in and put between us? Where an oil company tries to remove indigenous communities from their lands, will AI actually come in and defend us? These are bioethical cultures that we need to ask when we are designing these technologies, when this very silver bullet promises. And to me, is the empty promise of development, if anything. We need to be cautious. That's why I invite before I say cautious. There is urgency, but it has to have cautious embedded. And then when you're trying to engage with indigenous communities, remember that you need to be invited. You have to be invited. It's like if you're eating dinner and I'm walking through the street, I just invite myself into your living room.
You're not just sitting down at my table. I understand.
Like I just start sitting in the head of the table and asking you like, hey, where is my dinner? Demanding you to serve me. Imagine that's how intrusive and also imposing it could be if you are not invited in a community. I'm not questioning the good intention in there, but by being invited, you're actually understanding the cultural politics and the social politics of the area, because it's not the same thing between saying I am respectful of indigenous cultures, because that could also become very quickly into romanticizing. and then we start creating biases and stereotypes. Primarily, it's the stereotypes.
Yeah.
You know, like
romanticizing is a good word. Yeah,
is romanticizing that. So be invited by indigenous people of the community that you want to be involved with or you want to collaborate with, and they go through the process. Like a minute ago, we discussed bioculture design. So those are things that we as a Kindred Hub, we consult and we can help for you to go through this process. If you are very looking to do it authentically and you're looking to become a not just an ally, but what if you become a culture lawyer? Now, how you are sitting in between, understanding these two cultures, and you become an advocate.
Which I think what I called earlier on the ambassador, right? When
exactly
I referred to you,
the ambassador, as I was, as you were referring to me, like as an ambassador, but then I was saying like a grounding embassy. You see that those two things play nicely. So those are key elements that we need to start thinking about. And please don't ever use at least in my experience, using the words beneficiary to indigenous people or local communities is truly degrading, because in a way, if you are coming from outside, you are benefiting from that community, because by being you there in that community, you asking for a lot. You're asking for resources that they don't have, time that they don't have. You know, you're asking for a lot. How that will possible that they are beneficiaries of what you're bringing? Is the other way around. They are the shareholders. They hold the resources that your initiative, your program, you yourself want to be part of. I'm not saying you want to take it, but want to be part of. So therefore, by using the words beneficiary, it doesn't help. It creates, again, this degrading stereotype that money can solve everything. But it's not. It's not a reality. It's a relationship. It's a trust. It's a kinship. You know, kinship is what holds things together.
Right. I mean, if you allow me, in business, if I try to translate it a bit into consulting business language, right? It's don't push your solution to somebody, right? Before you understand what really concerns that person. Is that solution really sensible, usable? Is it sustainable, and so on and so forth? So I think, at least for me, over the last hour, I said it's been fascinating. It's been an eye-opener. But that's clearly one of the messages that's sticking with me, right? Not just taking something that I think or we think has worked here, so it must automatically work somewhere else as well. So if we can all take this message with us.
It's a pluribus. It's a pluribus. It's a dimensionality that we need to keep in mind and look carefully. Those things will definitely serve us in the ecosystem if we are in the direction to reconciliation. You know, if we are in the direction of reconciliation, and I hope we are going in the direction between indigenous and non-indigenous, and between industrialized and non-industrialized societies, to reconcile. The business and economy has done some harm in our societies. Mutually, there has been some harm. But how now do we bring systems that are adaptable? How do we bring indigenous systems of economics and business models that speaks on behalf of these needs and the agendas that they are trying to accomplish? So Kindred Hub sits in that kind of stage, or kind of bridge building, in a way to collaborate, to bring the collaboration across this permeable membrane, as we have been talking about these two spheres.
And fortunately, we are in a position that we know we have access to people like you now, right? Who can play that, as I call it, ambassador, translator, bridge builder, whatever role. So I would probably shout out to our audience, if ever there is a need for a bridge builder or a membrane channel. you have we have Nawe as an expert, as a true expert in that matter.
Yeah, we do offer consulting. At the beginning, I do a lot of the consulting myself. Sometimes my team, but the idea is how do we start building and bringing more capacity building for the younger generations, so they can also be. There is very little number of indigenous people from communities that they have go through this process. Like
Correct.
I am one of the very few fortunates of even speak this language,
Yep.
English, which is allowing me to communicate to you and to the audience. So it is a privilege that I am now looking, how do I metabolize these knowledges and ways of knowing and unknowing into the next generation. And for that, we're always looking for people that wants to become ally as a form of supporter, a donor, sponsor, as a way of how do we create this reconciliation when these things that needs to happen in order to bring both societies, industrialized and non-industrialized, into sustainability. Literally, that's what it comes down to it.
Great, good. I hate to stop here. I would have loved continuing with you for many more hours, but we're confined to the 1 hour. So again, now it has been an honor and a great pleasure talking to you. Wish you all the best with your undertakings. And to all the listeners and the viewers of this episode, thank you for having been with us, and goodbye and thank you.
Oh, thank you. And please follow us on Instagram and also LinkedIn. You can find us.
Definitely will do. Thank you, Nawi. All the best.
Thank you.